welcome back to another Just 5 Mins or Just 5 Minutes. I'm playing around with both of those. Anyway, this one is a bit of a revisit of Hasura, whichever way you say it, GraphQL, which I think I did back at episode 14. Essentially, well, the tagline is basically instant GraphQL on all of your data. So what is that and how does that work? Well, GraphQL, you must have known, you must know about that already. It's essentially a single endpoint, HTTP endpoint, but you can query your data instead of doing REST APIs for one resource for each thing, like, you know, get customers will get you a full list of customers, get customer / by ID or something like that. Whereas GraphQL, you could get exactly what you need, but also you can bridge across, like joins, and it handles updates of, again, multiple resources. So for instance, you know, you could get customer and all their payments and their sort of buying history in one thing. So even though in REST they might all have different resources and different endpoints for all different parts, which means you're doing all that round trip sort of business. Yeah, GraphQL can really simplify that, and also when it does the, as they call it, mutations, you know, the updates, you're not restricted to just one object, essentially. You can update across, again, related objects across that graph sort of landscape, as it were. But yeah, I've looked at it. Sure, do you know what? I've not actually used it, and I think the reason being, when I did this back in episode 14, which doesn't sound that far away, but it was definitely a couple of years ago. I think they hadn't quite got SQL, and unfortunately, excuse me, SQL is, or Microsoft SQL anyway. You know, that's where I live and work, and that's what I'm comfortable with. I know, you know, there's lots of other databases. Basically, you've got Postgres, which I think was one of the big one that it came out with. But now you've got Microsoft SQL Server, crikey, Google BigQuery, Azure DB, Postgres. Yes, the up in good old Azure. But there's lots of others: MongoDB, MySQL, Oracle, Snowflake, actually, which is coming soon. Apparently, that one. But there's quite a few. Excuse me, and like I say, I think that's what held me back last time, is that it wasn't there from Microsoft SQL. So there's a bit of interesting conversations on the interweb out there about GraphQL and being maybe not as secure. Look, I don't know the full depth of this, but I guess people are saying, well, look, you know, you've got a single endpoint. If you can hack through that and get through, you could potentially get access to data. Look, of course, but again, Hasura seemed to suggest that, you know, out of the box, it will add all the authentication that's necessary for you. So it's built-in authorization and caching. It's got, you know, the full remit of all the GraphQL and REST APIs. I don't know, it looks really interesting, but the key bit, of course, that we're trying to get to here is that rather than you have to build your GraphQL infrastructure yourself, you can essentially go through, I mean, this great, I'll put the link in there anyway. It's www.hasura.io, but I'll put the link. But you basically can point it at your database, select what you want to expose, as it were, and whether it's read only or, you know, a mutation and update capable. But it does look really interesting, and they're saying, you know, essentially, you know, from your database to unified GraphQL API in just 1 minute. I think they're stealing my idea there a little bit. Hang on a minute. It's not even just 5 minutes. It's just 1 minute. I missed a trick there, didn't I? But yeah, look, it looks really interesting. I am going to give this a go because I can work with, you know, good old Microsoft SQL. You know, I've got a little bit into Postgres SQL and MongoDB, of course, in the past. but I shall let you know how that goes. But it's just worth a revisit because it cropped up in my consciousness again just a week or so back. And I really want to see just how far you can push this thing, and really about the authorization. That's the one thing, because I've seen that of late where GraphQL's been getting a little bit of a knock, but I dare say it's probably how you set that up. Like everything, like a REST API, if you don't really have the correct authentication and authorization, obviously two different things, then you are heading for a little bit of disaster there, aren't you? But I'll put it in there. Apparently, the last thing I will say is that they've got some fairly big names. Atlassian, Netlify, Airbus. There's quite a few. How much they use these things, I don't know, but it's certainly worth a revisit in my book. So that's what I'm going to be doing, really, from this week onwards. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. We'll catch you on the next one.